Hey guys, you are on the most mystical channel, Mr. Creepy Depp. Today I'm going to tell you a scary story about being stalked by a stranger. Huge request, subscribe to my channel and put a like under this video. This will give me the opportunity to tell longer stories for you. Thank you all for your support and enjoy watching. The leaves had only just begun to change, signaling the arrival of autumn, but the chill in the air felt more like a winter's night. I found myself walking briskly, partly due to the cold biting at my skin, and partly due to a growing unease within me. My steadfast comfort in the quiet solitude had been disturbed. About a week earlier, I had noticed an unfamiliar man with strange behavior frequenting my usually quiet haunts, a coffee shop, the local library, even the secluded running trail. Everywhere I showed up, it seemed, there he was too. He was about average height, scruffy brown hair with sharp eyes that held an intensity that was anything but mundane. At first I treated it as a mere coincidence, but as the recurring pattern became harder and harder to ignore, I began to get seriously worked up. Conducting my day-to-day activities began to feel like playing a role in a suspense movie. That very evening, I had seen him again at the convenience store. The cold gleam in his eyes mirrored the steeliness of the knife display just nearby. A chillier wind swept down the deserted street as I quickened my pace. I had started taking more convoluted routes home, and it was not out of curiosity that I frequently peered over my shoulder. Just a few rows of houses now separated me from my own. I could almost feel the warmth of my living room. However, when my feet abruptly stopped, it was not the thought of safety that had paralyzed them. There he was, shadowy figure half-veiled in the depth of an alley, that familiar frame just barely visible under the flickering street lamp. A glimpse was enough to freeze the blood in my veins. He was nearer to my house than he had ever been before. I felt faint, and my heart throbbed in my ears, muffling the normal nighttime orchestra of the city. As daunting as it was to pass him, the thought of turning back seemed even grimmer. I pulled my phone out, fingers numb and shaky, ready to dial for help. However, right at that moment, a cat screamed in the distance. Startled, I took my eyes off him for just a second, and in the next, he was gone, as if swallowed by the shadows. His sudden disappearance did little to alleviate my fear. If anything, it heightened it, adding in an overwhelming layer of dread. Darting the last steps toward my front door, I fumbled with my keys. The resounding click of the lock seemed alarmingly loud in my heightened state, and I threw myself inside, panting heavily. I gave the street outside one last sweeping glance, though it appeared deserted. I was safe, for now. I felt a flicker of comfort amidst the fear. I wasn't alone in this. Tomorrow, first thing, I'd inform the authorities. He couldn't lurk in the shadows forever. But the grim foreboding that hung in the silence of my house was a harsh reminder that the night was still young, and behind his anonymity, the strange man was still free to roam, stalking in the unseen corners of my life. With a trembling sigh, I closed the curtain, an act of defiance proven weak in the face of the nameless fear I couldn't shake off. As dawn broke the following morning, the fear that had held me hostage lessened, replaced by a newfound sense of determination. I sipped my coffee, the morning news playing in the familiar rhythm in the background while I dialed the local police station. Officer Mendez. The voice on the other end sounded alert, a stark contrast to the apprehension in my tone. My summary of my encounters was met with a mild interest. He assured me that while it could be a series of coincidences, they would look into the matter. His calm reaction didn't do much to soothe my unease. Days turned into nights and nights into mornings, each marked by my near paranoia. I saw him not once during this time, his sudden absence as unsettling as his lingering presence. There was no word from the police either. My home, once a haven, now seemed like a glass house, each rustle of leaves, creaks of wood, and random shadows fueling my hyperactive imagination. I fortified my daily routine with caution, installed a security system, and even dug out an old baseball bat from the attic. Those nights were sleepless, punctuated with vivid nightmares, him being in my house, hitting in my shadows. One chilly evening, the alarm from my newly installed security system shattered the tranquility. Heart in my chest like a caged bird, I quickly reviewed the footage. To my terror, it was him. The familiar, sinister figure loitering at the periphery of the security camera's vision, just out of focus but easily recognizable. He was back. The police were prompt this time. They patrolled the area, took another statement, but by the time they arrived, he was already gone, swallowed by the night once again. This game of cat and mouse was taking its toll. I was no longer sure if the house was ever safe. In the coming days, I felt his unseen presence loom over me, like a storm cloud hovering relentlessly. Every day felt like walking a tightrope. My body ached from the stress. My mind was stretched taut with fear and vigilance. Despite the hounding uneasiness, I had to persevere. I couldn't surrender my life to fear, and I wouldn't run. This was my life, and it was about time I reclaim it from the dark veil that this figure had thrown over it. Things had to change, I decided. Maybe it was time I did some stalking. The following morning, I woke up with the sun. I had gone from being prey to a predator of sorts. I sat down, tracing my steps in my head, trying to draw patterns, create a blueprint. Every encounter with him was appraised, dissected. I had to find a way to predict him. I had to reassert control. I looked at the map I had pinned on the wall, which depicted all the places I had come across him. The first was the coffee shop, then the library, and then that convenience store. Was there a route he took? Was there a favored spot? If the police couldn't locate him, I would have to do it myself. For several days, I juggled my life between normal activities and my self-awarded detective work. I revisited the spots, took offbeat routes, always keeping an eye out for anything that seemed out of place. 1 week later, my relentless pursuit paid off. Near the old convenience store, I spotted him across the street. His cold eyes penetrated mine just before he deliberately turned and began to walk away. Not running, not even with a hurry. He knew I had seen him, and he was leading me somewhere. Adrenaline pumping through me, I followed him, phone clutched in my hand, ready to dial for help. His path led me out of town towards the neglected old industrial area. It reeked of decay and abandonment, the perfect place for someone like him to keep a low profile. As he slipped into an old brick building, I dialed the police, whispering the location to them, and hid behind a dilapidated wall, heart hammering, waiting for reinforcement. Within 10 minutes, that felt like an eternity, the police arrived. With guns at the ready, they burst into the building and found there the man I have described. His subsequent arrest revealed him as a wanted criminal, hiding and plotting amidst the mundane. I breathed a sigh of relief. The shadow, that fear, was finally gone. A feeling of warmth began to replace the months-long bone-deep chill. Months later, I now find myself relaxing in the comfort of my safe haven, my sanctuary reinstated. There's newfound appreciation for the mundane and the familiar, and an invincible safety inside my walls. But the experience has left me changed. I'm no longer the person I was, for I stared fear in the eye and took it down. I have been stalked, intimidated, had my life threatened. But in the end, it was I who pursued the pursuer and exposed him. I claimed back my life from the jaws of fear. It's a new dawn now, not just a day, but a chapter, a life. His chapter was over and mine had just begun. That's the end of it. I hope my story impressed you. If it did, don't forget to put a like under this video and subscribe to the channel. In the next videos, you will be waiting for the most mystical stories from around the world. Do not miss. See you in the new video.